On November 13th, 2022, Moscow police received a 911 call.
911 location of your emergency.
Hi, something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
The caller sounded confused and distressed, speaking in a way that the dispatcher could not clearly understand.
I need someone to repeat the address for verification.
The address, 1122 King Road.
But once the voice became clearer, the caller reported an unconscious person at 1122 King Road, an off-campus residence. At first, police thought it was a medical emergency, but when they arrived, they were shocked. It wasn't a medical case at all. Inside the house, they discovered 4 bodies: Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernadle, and Ethan Chapin, all brutally stabbed to death. 2 other friends were inside the home, but surprisingly, were unharmed.
There are plenty of questions and very few answers after 4 students at the University of Idaho were found murdered in their off-campus house. Authorities are calling it a crime of passion. Here's Stephen Fabian.
At first, police started interrogation with the 2 other roommates who were unharmed, Bethany Funka and Dylan Mortensen. Police first questioned Bethany, but she told them she had been in deep sleep and didn't hear or see anything that night. She said she went to bed early and only found out in the morning what had happened. But later, when police started questioning Dylan, she made a shocking statement that gave investigators a very important lead in the case. Dylan said she woke up in the middle of the night and saw a tall man dressed in black, wearing a mask, walking quickly towards the sliding glass door. She froze in fear and locked her door back. For investigators, this was the first real clue. Dylan's description gave them an image of the killer. In addition, police collected 2 other important pieces of evidence from the crime scene. One of them was a leather knife sheath for a Kabar-style military knife left on the bed next to victim Maddie Mogan. Investigators also found male DNA on the snap button of the sheath. This DNA did not match any of the victims and became a crucial piece of evidence that greatly helped the police solve the case. Afterwards, their bodies were taken for post-mortem examination. The autopsy reports were released on November 17, 2022, 4 days after the murders. All 4 victims died from sharp force injuries caused by a large, fixed-blade knife. Each victim had injuries on different parts of their body, including hands, chest, lungs, and liver. However, Xana Kernodle's body was the most severely injured. She suffered over 50 stab wounds, including fatal injuries to her lung and heart. She also had significant defensive wounds on her hands and arms, indicating a violent struggle with her attacker. After the autopsy report came in, investigators began checking surveillance footage, traffic cameras, and mobile phone tower data. Just 3 days after the murders on November 16, 2022, FBI officially joined the investigation. On November 20th, 2022, police held a press conference where they openly asked the public for help. They created a local tip line and an email address, requesting anyone with any kind of information should share it through these channels. They also specifically asked for video footages of a personal security camera footage, Ring doorbells, business cameras, for any suspicious activity between 3 and 6 a.m. on November 13th. After this press conference, the FBI, along with the police, received tens of thousands of tips and leads from all across the country. In response to the request for footage, people submitted hours and hours of video recordings from their private cameras. When police reviewed the videos, they noticed a white Hyundai Elantra near the victim's house around the time of the murders. Investigators believed it to be a 2011 to 2013 model, seen in the King Road area multiple times before and after the crime. On December 7, 2022, the Moscow Police Department publicly asked for information about a 2011-2013 white Hyundai Elantra seen near the crime scene during the early hours of November 13, 2022. They urged anyone who owned or saw such a vehicle to come forward. As time passed, people responded strongly and gave thousands of tips and pieces of information to the police. Many reported seeing white Hyundai Elantras in Moscow and even in other areas. Then on December 15th, police received a very important piece of information a police officer working at Washington State University in Pullman, submitted a tip. In it, he reported that there was a white Elantra on the university campus. This tip was crucial in helping investigators narrow their focus. This was a very important tip because it came from a police officer at Washington State University in Pullman, just a 10-minute drive from Moscow. After this, police narrowed their search from thousands of white Elantras in the region to a much smaller, more manageable list. Investigators then compiled records from the Department of Motor Vehicles to create a list of all white Hyundai Elantras registered in the entire region, including both Idaho and Washington. They focused on owners who had a connection to Washington State University or the Pullman area. When investigators cross-checked the data, they identified all the owners and began secretly monitoring them. To confirm a possible suspect, investigators needed to match the DNA found on the knife sheath at the crime scene with the DNA of the owners. They secretly collected DNA evidence from the trash of each owners and tested it. One of the samples matched the DNA of an owner's father DNA, and it wasn't anyone else. This pointed directly to Brian Kohberger, a PhD student at Washington State University, who was the registered owner of the white Elantra. On December 13th, investigators discovered that Kohberger and his father were driving his white Elantra across the country to their family home in Pennsylvania for the holidays. The FBI tracked his entire journey. Once he arrived in Pennsylvania, they waited for the right moment. On December 30th, 2022, a SWAT team arrested Brian Kohberger at his parents' home in Pennsylvania.
And now, the latest on the investigation into the murders of 4 Idaho college students. A surveillance team watched the Monroe County home of suspect Brian Kohberger's parents for 4 days. Today, we're learning more about what he did in the days leading up to his arrest.
After arrest, the FBI collected a direct DNA sample from Kohberger, which perfectly matched the DNA found on the knife sheath. During interrogation, it was revealed that Kohberger was pursuing a PhD in criminology at Washington State University. He also confessed that he had stalked the victim's residence at 1122 King Road multiple times before the attack, as his phone had pinged near the location 12 times prior to November 13th. On the night of the murders, he arrived in his white Hyundai Elantra around 3:45 a.m., parking nearby to avoid detection. He entered the house through a second-floor sliding glass door, which was often left unlocked. Carrying a large, fixed-blade knife, he went straight to the third floor, where Kaylee Goncalves and Madison Mogan were sleeping. Both were brutally attacked and killed. He then moved down to the second floor, where he encountered Zana Kernadel, who was awake, possibly after receiving a DoorDash delivery. She fought back, but was overpowered. Finally, he killed Ethan Chapin, who had been asleep. The attack was swift and violent, lasting no more than 15 to 20 minutes. After the murders, Kohberger left house through the same sliding door around 4:20 a.m. He was seen by roommate Dylan Mortensen. Kohberger's phone was turned off during the crime to avoid tracking. He drove away at high speed and captured on surveillance cameras fleeing toward Pullman, Washington. After returning to his apartment, Kohberger disposed of the weapon and blood-stained clothing. The next day, he started his daily routine as if nothing had happened, attending classes and meeting people normally. During the interrogation, investigators found through phone data that after the murders, Kohberger remained around 2 or 3 houses nearby to observe police activity. On 3rd January 2023, Brian Kohberger was formally charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. Police have a powerful evidence against him, the direct match between his DNA and the sample on the knife sheath, which became the strongest link tying him to the crime. Even so, questions remained. Why did he do it? What was his motive? And why did he refuse to give any confession? For over next 2 years, Kohberger maintained a not guilty plea.
The murder of Madison Mogan, how do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
For the murder of Kaylee Goncalves, how do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
The murder of Zana Kernodle, a human being, how do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
The murder of Ethan Chapin, a human being, how do you plead guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
However, Just weeks before his trial was set to begin in 2025, he changed his course in a shocking move. On July 2, 2025, Bryan Kohberger pleaded guilty to all charges. The plea was part of an agreement with prosecutors to avoid the death penalty. Instead, he would be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At his sentencing hearing on July 23, 2025, the court heard victim impact statements from the families of Kaylee, Madison, Zana, and Ethan. They spoke of their unimaginable grief, loss, and the lifelong sentence they themselves had been given. Dylan, the surviving roommate, also shared her story. Her testimony revealed the lasting trauma she continues to carry. The judge, condemning Kohberger's actions, sentenced him to 4 consecutive life terms without parole, ensuring he would never be a free man again. After thousands of tips, countless hours of video, and a single strand of DNA, the legal case was closed. If this deep dive into the investigation helped you understand this complex case, then please support this channel by hitting the like button and subscribing for more forensic breakdowns and true crime analysis. Your subscription helps us continue to bring you well-researched content. Thank you for watching.